Just quickly before we dive into this podcast, I want to address that we did have some audio and video sync issues when editing. We did the best we could, and I think it's pretty good, but the quality of the conversation is there, and at the end of the day, that's what matters. So I hope you still enjoy it. Over the coming months, there's going to be more investment going into this podcast, which I'm really excited for you guys to listen to. So expect to see some changes on an episode-by-episode basis. If there's anything you would like to see or hear more about, please let me know in the comments on any platform that you're using, and we can really grow this Midweek Motivation Podcast to a new level. All right, let's dive in. Welcome back to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, a show where I interview interesting and inspiring guests from all walks of life, including athletes, entrepreneurs, artists, and people with big dreams who go out to change the world. This is episode 6, and today's episode is Michael Holden, a high-performance coach, best-selling author, and former Fortune 500 executive, who walked away from a 2-decade career in wealth management to pursue a life of authenticity, resilience, and purpose. Michael is the author of The Authenticity Deficit, a book that challenges financial professionals to break free from outdated models and build real, meaningful connections. But his story isn't just about finance, it's about transformation. After surviving cancer, spinal surgery, and the grind of corporate America, Michael took a leap of faith, flying across the world to Fiji for a total reset. That experience changed everything for him. His mindset, his faith, his career, and even his approach to health and performance, which I'm really looking forward to diving in today. He has also shifted to an animal-based diet, optimized his fitness, and now coaches leaders on mastering their authenticity quotient, a concept that blends peak performance, mental resilience, and deep personal alignment. Michael's journey aligns closely with my brand, Rep Coaching, which is about coaching high performers to unlock their next level. Whether it's building strength, pursuing past limits, or rethinking what's possible, today's conversation is going to deep dive into faith, mindset, physical transformation, and taking through the bold risks that lead to real breakthroughs. Mike, man, welcome to the show. There's a lot to dive in. Oh man, how are you?
Good morning from Chicago, Illinois. I think it's past 2 p.m. there in the UK. So also 10 degrees and maybe 6 inches of snow out the window. So good morning. How do you do?
Wow. Yeah, I'm well. It's been some time since we last spoke.
Yes, it's really good to see you, Cam. It's really good, particularly since we met in Fiji.
Yes, and that's going to be a big sort of backbone of this conversation today. But for the audience who don't know you, I guess let's just start, who you are, what's your background, and I guess the whole corporate America thing, because we'll start from there.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start because I can say I was born and raised in America, a Chicago, Illinois native. I've moved around the state, so virtually wherever work told me I needed to go, I'd pick up and move to that state. Today I have 3 kids, but my story, I would say if you looked at me on the outside, you would see a guy who makes a good living, a guy who went to the right schools, a guy who seemingly on the outside seems to have it all. And for years and years and years, I was walking around not being fulfilled. And I was silently stuck. Because by the ways of the world, you would think I was doing everything right, but my soul wasn't fed. And it just got to this point where it started impacting my body, started impacting my presence. And I would say finally, it sounds like when you resign from a 20-plus year career that you just woke up and said, I had it. And parts of me wants to believe that that's actually what I did, but that's not in fact. It was a slow burn where I finally couldn't take it. And couldn't take it because being fulfilled versus having stuff or having a certain perception that doesn't matter to you anyway, I chose being fulfilled. And I'm actually in this journey, and what's really neat is I always say I'm my first patient, I'm my first client. I'm the first outcome of this authenticity process that we'll talk more about. But yeah, in a nutshell, I'm a person who has recategorized the way I view the world, and I'm just in this beginning phase of now having the world that I see follow. So I love this Einstein quote. If you are so bold as to try to change the world, you first must be bold and change your mind and the way you look at it. So Einstein knew a thing or two. I totally botched his quote because that's not exactly how it went, but you get the point.
Well, thank you for sharing the words of wisdom from Einstein, whether it's not entirely accurate, but I think it works for this conversation. But man, yeah, thanks you for sharing your background there. I would love to know, like, you didn't really sort of notice everything happen all at once, right? This build up of burnout, maybe loss of purpose. But I guess
Yes.
in terms, what is that like? Where's that turning point of suddenly where you're chasing this dream, you're chasing like the next step in your career, and then suddenly something is just not right in the end?
And this may not make total sense, but for years I would, in order for a person to reasonably disregard something, reasonably say throw it away, you have to first acquire it. So an example would be I had all these goals of being an executive and moving to the next role and succeeding within this, and I would acquire it year after year, every 5 years, after 10 years. Similarly with school, even that. I think I've always wanted to go to an Ivy League graduate study program, and I acquired it. Now, that's the important disclaimer here is I acquired these goals in order for me to now say I disregard them. I don't fully disregard them, but that's no longer my focus. It's like it's behind me. Does that make sense? And so I think a very polite way of describing this journey is as I grew more comfortable in myself, I started outgrowing the shoes of my life that I was wearing in that particular life. So, it's this whole notion of looking at it differently and expanding yourself, because really, I think my mindset is entirely almost like a different person after finally having the courage to say, you know what, I'm not doing this anymore. And it's that conviction, right? Like I just don't want to be a part of this, and it's not for anything other than I grew out of those shoes.
And was that commitment to leave, was that straight away as soon as you realize I'm not fitting these shoes anymore, or did you say build up some runway to leave, or did you have to talk to some people close to you in life to finally make that commitment? Tell us more about that leaving process there.
Yeah, I felt a bit like I had to. I felt this internal drive that I was being called. And I would say that this final decision, the actual outcome of probably 3, 4, or 5 years. Like, say at like year 5 before resignation, I was like, eventually I'm going to do this. Year 4, I was like, year 3, I'm like, I really have to do this. And by year 2 and year 1, I started getting really ill. Because my actual body, my physical body was saying, you keep trying to elongate this. My spiritual body was saying, you keep trying to, like we say, the Heisman, you keep trying to pass this off. And I was starting to degrade to a point of, honestly, real concern, real concern, hospitalizations and things of the like. So, there's this notion of your body will let you know. And in this case, there's a whole suite of reasons, of why I couldn't do this anymore. If you were to put me on the spot and say, what are those reasons? You get a degree of burnout. Once you accomplish the hill, you realize that the hill wasn't exactly the hill you thought, and you got to go to the next hill. Then I got to a point in the spirit of growing out of my shoes. I thought I was a gladiator playing in the Colosseum, when as I was maturing and looking at the world differently, it felt more like Little League baseball in a local field. And so that has more to do with just growth and mindset shift. But the other thing that's important to mention is you get to this point in life where, for me, I didn't come from a wealthy family. I actually came from very humble beginnings of a family. And I witnessed my parents trade their time for money for their whole life. And I'm witnessing myself now in my mid-40s having traded my time for money for my whole life. And when I state that, it becomes obvious to me that when you just trade your time for money, you won't have fulfillment. And then if you don't have fulfillment, you don't have passion. And if you don't have passion, well, you're not, in my mind, you're not at your, we'll say, peak state, at your best. And I think that's important for being a driven human, right? Like, you want to feel like you're growing, you want to feel like you're contributing, you want to feel like you have authentic love and connections. And let me tell you, if you're looking for authentic love and connections in corporate Wall Street, you ain't going to find it there. The only authentic love and connection you find there is with making more money.
Yeah. Okay. And if you don't mind me asking, was the money thing, was that a big driver for you when you were advancing through your career?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And, now as I'm older, I've realized a lot about money because I was asked to define money in a seminar that we attended. And even a quarter century of dealing with finance and money professionally, even in that, I originally defined money as something evil or manipulative or something that was not for good. It was something used to persecute people. And going through just this notion of how you define money, really, it blew my mind because now I define money as an accelerator. Money is in fact neutral. So it is an accelerant of whatever you are, right? And so if money is, well, how about this? If it's your intention to contribute and do things of honor and be good, your money will accelerate your ability for you to achieve that intention. If you're the opposite and you're a douchebag or an asshole, well, money will accelerate your ability to be a douchebag asshole. Sorry if that's inappropriate, but I'm glad that you asked that question because
No,
part of my journey
nothing's
of
censored
being my
here.
first patient is understanding that now I materially look at money the opposite of how I looked at it for almost my entire life. I made all these emotional associations with money. I did maybe the first 100% of my career chasing it, thinking that money was associated with my significance. And I would say, oops, because that will never work. I think I think most people in the world maybe associate their significance with maybe their outcomes in the world. Mine was my work outcomes. And I think over time, I think that blew a hole in my heart and my soul because that wasn't really who I was. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. I guess never been in that position where you have been to know what it's like to, I guess, go on this money trap of keep going beyond your essential means of survival, and also just having a little bit to enjoy your life. So I'm really fascinated by this journey you've been on, and I'd love to know, because I think most people would go through this point in their career where they're not sure if they should continue down this path or do something else. But what people don't necessarily decide to do is figure out what's the next step. So they might think, okay, I'm going to leave this career, but I don't know if I can because I don't know what the next step is. So for you, did you have something already in mind when you left? As your question A. And question B, like, when did you decide to, did you get back to work straight away, whatever you decided to do, or did you take a big, long break? I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I did a final resignation. I quit one job, and then I was so filled with fear about the uncertainty that I got a random phone call. Hey, would you like to do this job? I said, sure. And there was absolutely nothing about that job that I wanted. And, it was a bunch of travel. It was 5 days a week. I have 3 kids. I'm flying all over the place. And that job lasted 90 days. Excuse me. Cameron, I took this job because I was terrified of not having a job. I've been working since I was 14 years old. And this is the first real gap that I've never had another plan, ever. And the stakes are so much higher in my life to make a choice like this with 3 kids and a dog and a house and all this kind of stuff. But to answer your question, I jumped to a job out of fear. It lasted 90 days. It was like having like venomous serpents in my stomach. Every day I was there, I was like, what am I doing? This is not the job. I finally resigned, and now it's been 5 months of being on this path. And the 5 months is really, I think, the biggest thing that I'd like to dig deep into, because I have categorically changed my mindset in almost every component of my life. And it's really what I believe now will be my mission, is to try to encourage people to be authentic within every category of their life. And so I don't want to overtalk. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Tell us what happens next. So you took 5 months off, and then what?
Yeah, so we start my journey with saying I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't fulfilled. It started to impact my health. I have had cancer a couple times, and I have had spinal surgery. I don't want to directly say it's a one-to-one correlation, but I think the stress I had in my soul had an impact on my body. What percentage? I don't know. That's not my pay grade. But I do think when your mind and your body and your soul aren't in line, things are going to fall apart, because that's what happened with me. And so with this deficit, I traveled the world looking for a deeper meaning and seeking for a truth. And I don't want to say I exactly found it, but I want to say I found it. And this book that I wrote started as a notion that it was just for financial advisors. Well, because that's what I was doing for the past 2.5 decades. And what evolved was all these conversations, having podcasts like this and going and being asked to be a speaker. And I've consulted a few folks I've worked with over the years. What has evolved is this notion of the authenticity quotient. And I always say in the early 1900s, they gave us the intelligence quotient, which was the IQ. And this is the early 1900s, Cam, and the IQ was a condemnation. You were either smart or dumb. There wasn't really shit you could do about it. And the only thing you really could do was cheat on the test and maybe get a better score. Children would brag to each other or make fun of each other, saying, I have a higher IQ than you. Well, okay, that's the early 1900s. Take us to the early 2000s. They gave us the EQ, the emotional quotient. And I've said before, I've formally studied the emotional quotient. I'm a registered corporate coach, and EQ training was part of that licensure. And I like the EQ. The reason why the world responded to the EQ is that you could work at it, much like push-ups, right? If you want to get in better shape, you got to do the work, you got to do the reps. And that's what was so hopeful about the EQ. And today I'm proposing to be this forefather, if you will, or founding father of the AQ, which is the authenticity quotient. And so the AQ is your truthfulness to yourself. And just to state my journey simply, I'm just working on these videos for my website that it's a free framework to share with those who are curious about it. And what I did was I created, we'll say, the 7 F's. And the 7 F's is like, first thing you do is you make a formula. And so I made this formula. And this formula starts with, by prioritizing what's at the top. What was at the top for me was, I almost wonder if I can share a screen and show it. But what was at the top for me was faith. So faith is where I get my energy from. And every person's going to have their own formula. So for me, it's faith. For you, it might be working out. That's up to you. But the whole goal is for you to make your own formula. Under faith was fitness. Under fitness was finance. Under finance was family. Under family was friends. Under friends was fun. And it goes in order. And if you were to look at, say, like my daily calendar, you would see that I will codify per day, right, of like if I've achieved a spot. And then in the end, I'll like tally on a percentage basis how many in this case, a 31-day period, how many days was I 100% of hitting my, in this case, 7 F's, right? So did I pay attention to the formula? Did I do an activity for faith? Did I do an activity for fitness? Did I do an activity? And so forth. And this has all come as just a result of traveling the world and seeking these higher things, is that I'm really starting to understand. Say, for example, a big part of my burnout was my participation with my family. Oh, what's that, right? And you know, what would happen is I'd be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. I'd show up to the dinner table, and my wife, we're a dual income family, so she was working as well. So no dinner was made. You'd come home, it's 14 hours, whatever, and you're just either ordering food or frantically trying to warm up food and, you know, get everyone fed so they could go to bed, and you could do the day over again. And so many times I would say, the lights were on, but no one was home, because I was totally exhausted in every other facet that is a core pillar of what I need daily. Same as such, the body needs an amount of water and food per day, so does the soul, right? And so I was walking around not fulfilling this balance wheel,
Yeah.
and I was wondering why I wasn't rolling. And the second I learned that, oh, if I just make sure I wake up, I have a good amount of workout per day, that I'm staying true to my diet, that I'm staying true to my faith, and that I'm still contributing in ways that bring home income to my family, by the time I get to my family, I'm fulfilled in a way that allows me to serve them better. Does that make sense? It's like, it's the old analogy of, gosh, I've traveled so many times. Every time you get
100%.
on the plane and they're giving you the instructions of when the oxygen mask drops, you know, if you listen to them, what they'll say to you is, if you're a parent, get your oxygen first. Because if you die, consider your kids dead. And it's just that simple. I'm paraphrasing. Obviously, they don't exactly say that, but my paraphrasing is it's accurate given my journey. Is that, man, if you don't do you first, you're worthless to everything else. And that is a mode of authenticity, right? So this whole notion of AQ is, how do we gauge our authenticity in these different facets or components in our life?
Yeah. So this is really interesting. So is this like what you coach people in particular, is finding what their AQ is?
So what's evolved, it's brand new, is I joined an old colleague and friend who actually wrote the preface of this. He's a two-time CEO, attorney, has been in wealth management for maybe 15, 20 years more than me. And we do a whole suite of executive coaching, and that's one component. So a suite of executive coaching, in this case, with Bob Finder and myself, what we do is we groom, or we consult or walk next to financial advisors in their specific communications to their clients. So that's like a very specialized portion of the consulting group. But then there's also the portion that I do of sharing my journey of, are you fully authentic with yourself, right? And so it's hard to say, other than the goal is to help people get better. Because I've been in finance for so long, it would be a shame to give up that skill set. And so, you know, the one component is for the wealth management population of the world. And it's been something I've been doing for 15 or 20 years. I'm just now doing it on my own. Then there's the personal side, where the personal side is, I have this story of authenticity. I had a tremendous amount of pain. This is how I worked through it. It's not my life story that I want to throw down your throat, but I'd like to take the tools I've learned and try to share them with you and apply them with you so that you could achieve this outcome too. So another example to share is, I did lose 50 pounds from September of 2023 till September of 2024. And today, now that I'm gaining muscle, I would say I'm down like 35 pounds. So I lost 50 in fat, and I've gained 15 in muscle since. And you know, it's things like this to share. I'm very much interested in both of them, and I love the outcomes I'm witnessing in both of them. But there's a warm spot in my heart for the personal side because I've not done that as much as the professional side.
Yeah. Well, firstly, congratulations on losing like that amount of fat. That's a huge result, and so many different points just coming from off that backbone. But let's dial back a bit. I think so. When you start writing your book, at this point, do you feel like you've finally been authentic to yourself, or is this something that you're kind of learning as you're actually writing this book? And what was the process of just the journey of writing that book as well?
Cam, what an awesome question, man. I rewrote the book 3 times. The book took me about maybe 4.5. And in the spirit of authenticity, here's a fun thing. I wrote this book. Actually, Bob Finder, my partner in one of these things, is he said, Mike, you need to go speak to Forbes based off your research in wealth management. And I said, no, I'm good. And he goes, no, I'm going to have someone call you. And so I end up flying out to, I think it was South Carolina. I did some 36-hour exchange. We were there for days. They were very kind. They sent my wife to a spa and all this kind of stuff while I was interviewing with their marketing, their legal, the editors, and it was a cool experience to go through this. Lo and behold, I get this neat form that says, you have been approved to be a Forbes author. One of 60 people in the entire year in America. Something like this. And you're like, wow. But at the end, they're like, by the way, it's $250,000. And it was like the music stopped. Like, wait, what did you say? And they're like, oh, well, you get our platform.
Oh my gosh.
You'll get these podcasts and, we'll make sure your book is on every airport shelf. And all of a sudden, that didn't really feel so authentic. I wrote the book not because I wanted to go make money. Who the hell makes money? At least I haven't made money, to replace my income from the book. Some people do. I'm not that guy. Maybe not yet. So I respectfully declined the Forbes thing, and I rewrote the book again. And then I rewrote the book again. And then finally, I decided to self-publish. I ended up getting introduced to a friend that, he has a platform when you could pretty much submit your book and they'll do all the stuff for you. And I self-published. So, I'd say I published in July of 2024. Yeah. So I published in, say, July of 2024. Cam, I didn't do shit with the book. It just sat on my shelf. Like, I can't explain it to you except I couldn't. Like, there was a subconscious palm on my forehead not letting me move. And I didn't know why. I just knew that by the time I looked at the book, I almost felt sick. I was like, nah, I'm going to hit pause on that. And then I finally resigned. Say I was full resignation in September of 2024. So from July to September, that book did nothing. I didn't even talk about it. And I namely didn't talk about it because I was scared of the content because I didn't know if corporate Big Brother was going to take an issue with it. It was too real. Corporate Big Brother doesn't like too real, right? And finally I go to Fiji, I meet you, we attend all these really cool things to really stir up thoughts and provoke new thinking, and that was just one of many, Cam. I went all around the world, man, in this spirit of deep self-reflection, deep thinking, deep study, deep application, and I realized now, I actually shared it in Fiji, I realized the reason why I didn't do anything with the book was because I wasn't authentic with myself. And I knew it. And I subconsciously knew it. I didn't consciously know it. And that's I love that you asked that question because so many of us get stuck in what we subconsciously feel in the core of our soul versus what we're pretending to be within our society. Our society takes away from us in every moment by way of, you got to wake up for work, you got to get to work, you got to do the work, you got to come home and make sure the work is done, and then right before you go to bed, you're still thinking about work before morning, and then morning you're doing it all over again. It's just so consuming that it tattoos an identity on you that may not be yours. At least that was my case. I'm not trying to say that for the masses. That was my case. when I finally unplugged from the matrix, I started becoming more authentic with myself, seeing the world differently, really loving myself, and realizing how, honestly, glorious mankind has been made. But the hamster wheel takes away from that glory at times, at least in my case. And now I've put out the book. And, I created a website, which is almost done. It'll be included in this thing. I created an assessment for people, which remind me, I really want to talk about the assessment. So you can take 20 questions and get a grade of your AQ, work on the frameworks, and hopefully do better. I go and I actively do podcasts, which is somewhat new to me. And then I go and I do guest speaking events, and we made this consulting group. Consulting for specific finance and consulting for the rest of the world. So yeah, it's I couldn't do it. To answer your question, I didn't do anything with the book until I got authentic myself. And now I can honestly say I'm my first client.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize like the gap between when you left corporate America, writing the book, and then when I met you in Fiji. Like, that was actually a very small time frame. I thought it had been some time. And this is actually funny. I'll go into the story of like how, I guess, our experience in Fiji. But so the first day, we get in after we both have long flights. Then I remember, so we get to Sava Airport, and we go to this tiny plane to get to the island we need to get to. And that's where I met you for the first time. And my impression of you were, you said this is your first time going to a Tony Robbins event, but you were so confident, you were excited of this journey. And it's just like you were just really ready for this experience. Later finding out, like a couple of hours later, when we're sitting at the restaurant, and you were like, oh yeah, your wife told you to go. It wasn't just like your decision.
No,
I mean, like, tell me if I'm misheard there, but let's go from that point. What was your impression when you arrived, and I guess talk about why you decided to go to that seminar.
I think I resigned September 3rd, and I called my wife and I said, honey, this isn't working for me. I resigned today. And so she's like, okay, well, what firm are we going to? And I was like, about that. And I was like, we're not going to another firm. And my wife is a sweetie pie. She's the opposite of me. I'm a bit bold, and she's a bit like neutral. Like we say gas clutch, right? So it's like I'm kind of the gas and she's kind of the clutch, and we drive together and it works beautifully. But so Rebecca says, get your ass home, which is not exactly Rebecca style. So I leave downtown, I make my way home, and right when I get home, Rebecca just puts a phone right to my ear and says, talk. What's happening? She's never been this forceful ever. And I'm already on the naughty list, so I'm like, okay, hello. And it's this lovely lady named Holly, who I at the time did not think was lovely. I was wondering who the heck she was and what's happening. And she's like, well, I'm a Tony Robbins seminar coordinator, and your wife says that you're interested to go to this. And I'm like, what? I'm like, Tony Robbins. Like, I know who that guy is, but for real? Like, my honest reaction was, I'm not interested. Tony Robbins is kind of a joke. That was my honest. And she goes, okay. She's like, well, she explains the thing. There's like there's 3 programs. It goes in order of 1, 2, 3. But the dates were skewed where 3 happened to come first, and then 1 came second, and 2 came third, if that makes sense. By sequence of time. And my wife's giving me this mean mug, like, you better talk to her. And I said, well, I'm not interested in going 90 days out. I just resigned. And I'm going to go do a massive disruptive action plan on my own. I'm not waiting 90 days to go to your seminar. So she does a long pause and she goes, well, I guess you can go to Fiji, which is number 3, first. And now I'm disenfranchised, like this salesperson, whatever. And she goes, well, I got to tell you, it's sold out. The number 3 sold out, but that's the one that's in a week, or in a couple weeks. Like, okay, well, have a good day. Hung up. 20 minutes later, I get a call. I'm like, hi, Holly. She's like, hey. I'm like, let me guess. There was a magical opening. And she neutralized my arrogance with love. and says, sir, may I ask, are you a man of faith? And I said, well, yeah, I'm Roman Catholic or Christian or whatever you want to call it. And she goes, well, I am too. I said, okay. And she goes, yes, indeed, sir, I am a salesperson. But through our mutual faith in God, I don't know how to tell you this any more clearly. There is an opening for Fiji in the next 10 days or whatever that was. And this never happens because this seminar books for years out for people. And God himself is creating a pathway for you to get to Fiji. And this neutralized my arrogance through her love, right? And I just it was almost like, it's like a punch in the gut. I felt it. I intuitively felt, I'm going to go. And so say it was, don't quote me, but say it was 10 days later after that phone call and 31 hours of travel time, I found myself in Fiji. And I found myself in Fiji. I remember this is class 3, so there's like a little bit of a culture with the attendees of, not a little bit, there is a punch you in the face culture of Tony Robbins attendees. And being so far out, I had a satellite communicator because it was really glitchy to try to communicate back in the States. And I'm like punching this code to my wife saying, what the fuck have you done? You have sent me to a cult. I am in a lost episode. All these people keep trying to hug me. Get me out of here. And then to make matters even worse, when I arrived to the front desk, I remember specifically saying, it's been 31 hours, where's the bar? And they looked at me like, what do you mean bar? And I looked at them like, what do you mean bar? I was like so upset because I just wanted to have a spirit. And then I find out, mind you, I had no idea as to the curriculum, what was to be done, what was the content. I knew it was called Life and Wealth Master. I was like, whatever, I'm here to appease my wife. And Cam, you were there. I love that you opened with your impression of me, but to just, I'm explaining your perception was right. I ended up having one of the most formative 12 days of my life. And I mean, I got there, look, I'm stuttering thinking about it because it was crazy. I got there watching these people who didn't know each other be so close, so open, so authentic, and so accepting and curious about what brought you there in the first place, that it immediately changed me. Pull me out of my old fishbowl, put me in beautiful Fiji ocean waters, and then be paired with authentic people who are wanting some sort of betterment, and they've achieved in their lives as well. Well, gosh, that was life-changing. Now, I'll tell you more about it, but I'm talking too much. So ask me more questions.
Nah, that was a really great story. Just 10 days, you're like, okay, I'm going to Fiji. For me, I had that in my calendar for over a year or something. So it was a long time wait, preparing for it. Yeah. And I guess I don't really want to talk too much about what you, I guess, really learned from that experience, because that could be a whole podcast episode of just the transformation aspect from that. But I think what's more important is how you applied that afterwards, away from that experience, away from that immersion. What happens after you come back from your journey in Fiji?
I'm open to saying the key takeaways that I learned in Fiji. A lot of divine intervention took place there, but ultimately divine intervention that created this new neural pathway in my. We really realigned the way I perceived everything. So one key thing was that I realized I really didn't have. I had buffered my ability to perceive emotions, and we can say this in many ways. We had a lot of trauma within the Holden family, be it the back surgeries. I have a kid with special needs, a kid that has had an enormous health journey. We've had a lot of trauma. We just lost a couple family members. We lost more family members during the C-word time. It was a really weird time. And I think because I was the father of the whole, I'm the dad, I think I trained myself to never let my emotions go too high and never let them go too low. Now, sounds simple, but do that for 20 years straight. And when you do that for 20 years straight, you are cutting something out of you. You're cutting something out of, you need your emotions, right? So when my father passed away, he passed away in my arms. If you saw my face, it was a total stone cold face. There was no expression. And there was no expression because now my mom was left alone. And there was a job to be done. When my daughter was in a coma, if you looked at my face, there was no expression, right? Or if I'm in a boardroom meeting and the shit hits the fan and that shit is on me, no expression. And I learned that from corporate America, to be honest. That's how you survive in those types of jobs, is no expression, lukewarm type of reactions, and then hot or cold on execution only. And you know, that was the biggest takeaway, is that I took something away from me to not experience emotions. So being out of the environment, I was really able to go back to when Dad died, or when my daughter was in a coma, or when I had a crazy corporate situation to execute, and really pay my human emotions to it. And all of a sudden, it's like the colors of the world started changing. It was pretty close to real time. It was within days that I was like, wow, I'm officially looking at the world and living in this new world that I see entirely different. That was one. You know, another thing was taking a leap of faith, which before I go into the leap of faith, I just want to make sure, am I answering the question? Leap of faith, I didn't
definitely.
know.
Go ahead. Leap of faith.
I was reading this every day. I was reading this book. Now, this is my stuff, right? But I read this book every morning. It's called Jesus Calling. And it's just my motivation. I said, I pull my energy from my faith. Whatever the listeners do, the encouragement is to find out where your energy comes from. You define it, but don't get lost in the fact that I'm talking about my faith. And so I happen to read, I'd wake up at 4 every morning. I would get my own workout, just the calisthenic types of things in, and I'd sit down, I'd pray, and I'd journal. And this particular morning, I read this, and I didn't think anything of it. But it ultimately, this Jesus Calling book is, they take Bible quotes, they put it all together, and they write it as if, like Jesus or the divine is writing a note to you specifically for that day. It's really encouraging. And this particular note said, oh, it's easy for you to illustrate faith in the little things. Help me get safely from the car to the work and back in this day. Yeah, you could have faith in that. Or I got in a plane, just help me not die on the plane. You could have faith in that. And the book illustrates this as the little things. And then it says, well, what about having faith for the big things? What about when I ask you to jump off a cliff into an abyss of the unknown? So, okay, I end up, I'm thinking about it okay, that's really cool. And now I'm making my way to our seminar. No idea what the curriculum is, no idea what I'm supposed to be doing. And this person opens with, today we're going to climb these 5-story buildings, and you're going to get to the top of this pole and stand on the plate on top of this pole, and there's a suspended trapezius, and you're going to jump your ass off this trapezius and off the pole and grab the trapezius. Now, I am shit my pants terrified of heights. There's no other way to say it. I freaking hate heights. I had no idea that this was going to happen. Let alone I had no idea we were doing a dietary cleanse. That's a whole other story. However, right when I get to the pole, it's almost like this energy, just as I'm holding my palm up to grab the pole, I feel this almost a pulsing heat. Feel the pulsing heat. I get immediately taken into that page I read for the morning, where it was well, what about the big acts of faith, right? And mind you, full disclosure, I got some tether rope thing, but we are in a third world country climbing a frickin' 5-story pole, and I'm terrified of heights. So now I go into this new meditative state, and that was maybe the first time I encountered that style of meditative state, because I felt like I was being called. The words of the morning all of a sudden calibrated, and this is so important. the intellect all of a sudden met an opportunity for action. The intellect, like all this shit I'm learning, met an opportunity to do it physically in the world. And now you're talking about this combination of your body, your mind, and it was such a spiritual thing, your soul. So I'm climbing this thing. You're climbing a pole, you're scared of heights, fine. But
Yep.
it became such a powerful example of this trilogy of, in this case, the three me's that happened to be full. Their cups happened to be full. So my body, I was feeling good. I lost all the weight. I was working out actively. I worked out in the morning. My mind, reading some intellectual things, doing some studying and journaling. Soul, I got to meditate and pray. All before I got to that pole. I get to the pole, and then they ask us, they say, I'll send you, I'll figure it out, but I'm going to send you a video, and let's have the editors try to sneak it in. I don't know if that's even possible, but if it is, that'd be great. I'm climbing, praying.
Yep.
every move that I'm going up. I get it. You're testing me. I have to show faith. And man, the wind starts blowing that freaking pole, and you did it. You get to the top, and it's moving. Do.
Yep.
And you're trying to balance. The rope's there, but it's not something you can lean your weight on. You can't use it for stability. And I get to the top, and I hold my arms out, and I'm looking down. Now, before you climb, they ask you, state what your goal is. State what you want. State why you're doing this. And off the top of my head, I said, I don't want companies or universities to give me my mojo. I want my mojo to come from me. I want my fucking mojo, right? And before you know it, now, I'm at the top. I'm standing there. I'm putting my arms out. And I look down, and you realize how high you are as you're swinging. And all these people, Cam, you tell me, you were there. Maybe 100 people are there. And they're all going, mojo, mojo, for those who were witnessing this thing. And lo and behold, man, I jumped. I did grab it, but my arms were smoked. I couldn't hold on. I grabbed it, and I came down. And when I came down, I couldn't help but be overwhelmed with wisdom. Not emotion, not like epiphany. Well, maybe epiphany, but a wisdom and a discernment. A wisdom and a discernment that if you put together this notion of your daily building, your body, your mind, your soul, you can do things so far beyond the scope of what you ever thought. So your world starts in your mind. Because if you came to just my mind and said you're going to climb a 5-story pole and you're going to jump and grab this thing, I'd say you're out of your fucking mind bananas, no, right? But then all of a sudden when you put the mind, the soul, and the body together, it almost was like if you had me do it again, it would be almost too easy. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I also am not great with heights, but I think now that you've done it and you know your reason and also what you came out of that experience, how you applied that, yeah, it'd definitely be easier, for sure. For me, the leap of faith. Well, day one, when we arrived, at this point in my life, so it wasn't that long ago, I had pretty much lost all my money. It's all gone. And just from either paying off my student debt, moving countries, paying for courses, whatever, and then just, I guess I was in that season of life where I was in complete winter. Everything was just like, one extra problem after another I had to solve. And that first day, we get to the resort, we got our, I think, welcome drink that we had, and we had to pay the security deposit. And, you guys were pulling out all your cards, and I'm like, oh shit, I don't have any money to pay for the security deposit. And I was so worried, what are people going to think of me because of this? What am I doing here, among people who are, I guess, more financially independent than I am. Fortunately, I got that sorted out, all good. And then come to the next day when we have the leap of faith, my journey was more I guess what I had to announce was, I wanted to become more financially independent and have security, for myself and for my family. And so I was scared shitless as well, coming for this challenge we had to do. But it wasn't until I kept trying to avoid it, and then suddenly one of the Fijian staff comes up to me and be like, "Okay, you're next to get your equipment on." And all right, as soon as the harness came on, then I had to completely change my mindset into this experience. I was like, okay, well, I'm doing it now. There's no turning back. Obviously, it took like another 20 minutes or so to go through the line, and then it's your turn. And then, I guess, similar experience to you, every step that I took, I was saying, I can do this. I can do this. Every time. Because if I suddenly lost my focus, I was going to just, my body was just going to be like, no, we're not doing it. But yeah, we did that. And that bar was actually quite slippery. I grabbed it and then just, instantly slipped off. But yeah, man, what a journey that was. And that was day one of it. But let's take a step back now. So you also said to me day one as well that you were following an animal-based diet. And I think this was quite surprising for the rest of the people in our group to hear that. Let's talk about that journey for a sec, because you previously mentioned you had some health problems in the history. Did that come from those experiences? Is this all related to the whole burnout situation? I guess go from there.
There was a burnout, but there was also a degree of not being fulfilled, and I didn't like if I saw what I was contributing. I was making money for these big firms hand over fist. Like, I was doing my job. If you looked at me on paper, it looked like I'm like this seasoned top 1%, top 5% executive who just gets shit done. But when I evaluated it, I was like, man, I don't really feel the pizzazz of this anymore. So I think the lack of fulfillment caused for like a burnout. But I think it's just important to like somewhat clarify that. So, okay, I'm sorry. What was the question?
Your health history, was that related to your journey of unfulfillment? And did that, I guess, correlate or along that path where you suddenly shift to an animal-based diet? We'll go from there.
Yeah, so I lost my old man in my early, and my dad, being that we're speaking to a UK population, my father was English. He was from Sussex, and he died at 60, either 60 or age 61. And he had diabetes, he had hypertension. He died of a massive heart attack. We didn't even know he had a heart condition, but he had a really bad health profile. And I went to the doctor. I was at 205 pounds, gave my blood work, which 205, I've probably weighed 180 since I was 18 years old. And once I was really starting to feel like, why am I even waking up in the morning? It just spiked to 205. And with the spinal surgeries, I lost my privilege of being able to move, because my back just couldn't hold that level of weight. And I found myself stuck in bed, like wobbling around. Like if I had, it was really not cool. And go to the doctor. Doctor says, you're pre-diabetic. I don't know how to be any more clear with you. You're going to die if you keep on this path. Your cholesterol's off, your weight is off, your mobility is off. You can't, it's like you're bedridden. It was terrible, man. So, what ended up happening was I said, I've gone through such a journey with my daughter and her epilepsy journey, where Catherine had to do a Mayo Clinic issued ketogenic diet, which a Mayo Clinic issued one is like so far beyond the scope of a Men's Health magazine keto or all the shit that you read. Like, you have teams of doctors weighing and like doing scientific and medical analysis on her every step and every breath. To give you an example, we had to measure 4 meals a day to the 10th of a gram, and it had to be concise, or it could potentially make her seize out. So 4 times a day for 5 years. So to say the least, we are seasoned veterans to a medical issued ketogenic diet. And I then applied it to myself. But what I want the world to know is every human body reacts to food in its own unique way. And so what may be good for me may be like death for you, right? And I worked with my doctor where on every 2 week to every 4 week basis, I was doing blood work to eat. Pretty much I've eliminated sugar and carbs from my diet for the most part. Say in a week, I have no more than 2 to 4 grams of sugar in a week and no more than 2 to 4 grams of carbs. And the reason why I even have those is sometimes they sneak sugar in your food and you don't know it. But in working with my doctor, and I just keep stressing it because sometimes people hear this wrong. In working with my medical doctor, checking my blood, checking my liver, checking my pancreas, checking my lungs, checking my heart, we determined together that this diet was very much appropriate for my body. So my cholesterol today is totally fine. All my heart, all the stuff they did with running on the treadmill and all the goofy tests they made you do, like totally fine. And honestly, I lost my first 40 pounds in 60 days, which was crazy because your body goes into ketosis and you're training your body to seek fat for energy as opposed to carbs and sugar for energy. And my body reacted to it like bam, and all of a sudden I was able to walk again, and like my breathing was less labored, and I'm able to participate in family events. I had a solid 2 months where I couldn't move, and the kids would come. Today I have a 8-year-old, 10-year-old, and 11-year-old. Yes, it's whatever. But so they'd come to the bed and they'd be like, Dad, can we go do this, this, and this? And they'd like look at me and they'd leave the room. And this happened for months and months. It was terrible. They'd go shopping, I wouldn't come, And then there was the time we went to a shopping center and I got one of those rolly carts. I never went shopping again. And so it was bad. There was so much pain that it leveraged me to enact the change. Right? And then finally, once I lost the 40, then I lost 10 over another couple months. And then, so now you're down 50 pounds. And I started looking I actually looked okay. I looked like my regular self. That's when I took the opportunity to start weightlifting. And then the weightlifting started adding killer gains and killer definition, killer tone, like more than I know. I'm not like Mr. Buff Stuff or a Men's Health magazine or a future Olympiad like yourself, but if you took these pictures of like before and after, it would blow your mind. It would blow your mind. So I changed the way I look at food, which is super cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, thank you for sharing such an incredible journey and just the pressures that you face physically, but also mentally when you're bedridden, and then suddenly you change aspects, you go through all the testing, and then 60 days later, lost all this weight, and then now you go into your strength training and your fitness journey, and now not only you're just like a leaner version of yourself, but you're also a stronger, more energized version of yourself. Like, that's fantastic. Wow, man. Like, I guess from now leaving Fiji, you mentioned that you created this website and you have this assessment tool. I guess tell me more about that and what else has, I guess, come from this opportunity since I met you, I guess. What are you up to these days?
Yeah, I think, let's see. So I met you in it was September, October. I did hurt myself in Fiji. I made the wrong move of jumping off a dive for scuba diving, and I actually ripped my calf. I ripped my quad tendon, and I ripped my shoulder cuff. So, and honestly, in this whole spirit of what we're talking about, I learned a lot from that too, because, like I couldn't move anymore in Fiji, and I had to learn how to depend on the kindness of the 100 people there. And what I realized was I didn't know how to depend on kindness. I'm a kid who came from first generation Americans that didn't have much. And so my grit was always like, it's either me or you. It just was always like that. And for the first time, it was not like that. And I was met with so much love and so much kindness. People, do you remember this, Cam? I would sit on a chair and guys would just carry me from the hotel room to the class. So so after Fiji was a whole world of 2 times of
That's
physical
right.
therapy a week. I'm still doing physical therapy here in February from the October injury. And I still was on this journey, man, of pursuing a deeper sense of fulfillment and a deeper sense of contributing, making things better, and making the people who I have in my life know how much I love them. That's that's like the 3 pillars that came out of leaving Fiji. I get home, my family sees a brand new man, and then I think I went to Newark for a similar convention in November, and then I went again for another like 5-6 day thing in Florida in December. And then come January, I started having discussions of this consulting group partnership. And then now here we are in February, right? And so, I mean, in such a short amount of time, I
Yeah.
am a completely different category of man. And now where I'm at is trying to share this story with as many people as I can, and trying to help where I can. You see, because it's such a privilege. Like one of these new like what is it called? It's called like my new primary question. I have a little billboard that I keep at the house. I have like a little billboard that each of myself and the kids made, and it's like, what are your
Wow.
guiding
Yep.
towards value systems? What are your negative away value systems? What's your mission statement? And then in this case, I have a new primary question. And the primary question to me is like my ace. Every time I feel shitty or I take my mood the wrong way or I don't want to do something, my primary question is, how can I take the blessings and the experiences and the knowledge from my life and add it much more to the situation that I'm in to just make it better? And like, it's really quite powerful for me every time I do that, because it changes, like, it hits a switch and it changes my negativity to being back in a beautiful gratitude. Does that make sense? So what's next? I've like done this journey around the world. I've come across all these different
Yes.
tools to keep my mind in this gratitude. And now I'm at this point, much like in the example of the poll, is like, okay, we know that the mind is good. We know that the soul is good. Where is an opportunity for me to put this in action so that they're all together? And it's like a plane taking off, man. You know, it's like once you get all 3 of those, the plane takes off. So what's next? I don't fully know. My life is a series of premeditated plans. It's like when I was born, my mom was like, "You will do this professionally," you know. And so now I'm, for the first time, trusting that I
Yeah.
have a suite, an arsenal of tools in the toolbox, and now I'm just taking the road, and the tools will apply as I go. So we have this consulting group. We're doing I'm doing these podcasts. I created this website. I got this AQ thing, and here's what I'm excited about the AQ thing, because once the website is done, it should be done soon. It's been taking much longer than I anticipated, but I want everyone to go to michaeleholden.com. There's a little button that says take an assessment. All this stuff is free, right? And it ultimately, you answer 20 questions and it'll pop out a grade saying that you're either strong, in the middle, or you need some work. But based off the grade you get, it'll correspond with the report of, this isn't rocket science, it's easy. Try these things and do it every day. And if you try these things and do it every day, take the test again in 6 weeks, in 7 weeks, 8 weeks, but take it relatively soon. Take the test again and watch how differently you perform. And then ask yourself, have I honestly received benefit from just thinking differently? And chances are you will. I saw it work for me. I see it work for the people I'm working with now. But my goal is to get a minimum of 1,000 people to take this test. And then I'm in talk with the folks at TED Talk, not TEDx. You can ask me to clarify that separately, but not TEDx, TED Talk. And if I can illustrate in this instrumentation, if I can illustrate that there is a betterment in people from this framework, man, we might have a shot at changing the world. right? And the whole notion is, let's get the world to first seek themselves in truth, and then you'll be your best self to then share with the world. It's so easily stated, but it's so hard to do, right? Like quitting my job. I was standing in this theater
Yes.
where there was 10,000 humans all crunched in for a show. And I'm looking at the 10,000, and my wife very lovingly, she whispers to me, out of all these 10,000 people, I don't even think one would quit the type of jobs that you quit, given the type of outcomes you were getting. And she's like, but you quit. And she said that, and remember, I didn't quit. I graduated is the best way to say it. Sorry. But you could tell she said that with a bit of like fear, anger, and love and awe all at the same time. And I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm trying to reiterate how hard it is versus how easy it is to say. Are you willing to say, let's talk about like my 7Fs, right? Like one of the hardest Fs is friends. So friends, to just unpack that is, a person who doesn't have friends, a Cameron with no friends is a Cameron without a mirror. Because whether you like it or not, behold, your friends are a direct reflection of you. And so it becomes a hard one because I'm a gentleman who has friends of 25 years or more. And I'm proud of my friendships, right? I love the fact that I have today I have 3 friends that I've known since kindergarten and we haven't missed a beat. So since age 5, I have friends. The thing is, in this notion of pursuing a higher authenticity quotient is, do your friends help your AQ or do they hurt it? And only you can answer that, but you got to be real with yourself about that. And God bless them. I have friends that are still in the high school loop. I have friends that are still in the undergrad loop, and that's who they are. That's fine. That's their thing. But then there's the times when they're like, hey, let's go to this place, and I have no want or anything like that. Or, hey, let's go do these things. And it's like, I'm just not there. I grew out of that. The old me used to be like, fine, we'll go do it. And ultimately, like, I'd feel like I'm not going to get that time in my life back. But I was trying to maintain the relationships with them. Well, my new framework is I'm inauthentic doing that. I never thought that before. But I'm inauthentic if I'm going to a bowling alley with you that we went to when we were 12, and I don't want to be there. I'm just going there to entertain you, who has no kids or a wife, but you still want to go here. And now I'm here with you while my 3 kids and my wife are without me. And so it's like, I don't know if that's a good explanation or not, but I thought friends was hard because in my life, I valued the longer friendships that I grew out of. And I still love them, right? Like, they're still my friends. It's just different now. And now this framework applies of like, okay, like, see, Cameron, you and I never met, and we met in Fiji, and I happened to come sit next to you. And I was so taken aback. Like, my perception of you when I met was, honestly, I was so proud that you were asking yourself these questions and you were making the sacrifices, to your point of not having money but figuring it out and getting there. Like, to me, at my point in life, that almost guarantees to me that you'll either be an Olympian, you're going to be famous, you're going to definitely be wealthy. Wealthy is not rich, right? Like, I was pursuing rich at the expense of wealth, and it made me poverty. Yes. Let me try to say that one more time. I was pursuing being rich, at the expense of being wealthy, and it made me poverty-minded. I'm talking about mindsets. And I met a young man who was pursuing wealth out the gate. And so I got to tell you, I love that about you, and I admire you so much. And when you reached out and said, hey, man, let's do this podcast, like, I was just so excited to get together and talk with you again, because I'm just so impressed by you, Cam.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for the kind words there. Everything you said, really powerful stuff there. And yeah, I mean, like, I think this is a really good place to wrap up on some really positive notes there. And I wanted to quickly just mention as well, I completely agree with you and said, I truly believe we can all change the world but it has to come down from changing yourself first in a way that's, I agree with you. You have to be authentic and true to yourself. And for me, like, yeah, as a personal trainer and a coach, I can, yeah, show you some exercises and help you with your diet plan to, say, lose weight, for example. But if you have the same habits and the same mindset that keeps you in this cycle, or not, if you're not seeing the progress that you want, it's because you haven't actually gone true to yourself and figured out what's really important, what's stopping you, and then actually making a strategy that's going to change that. And I see these people all the time. People sign up to the gym for selfish reasons, and then, but they continue to stay. The ones that do stay, they stay for because they love the community aspect. It's like more than just them. They feel they're part of something bigger. They're doing something better for themselves and inspiring those around them. So I completely agree with just, you have to just really work on yourself, and then that way we can all change the world in different aspects. But Mike, yeah.
Honestly, Cam, this is great, man. And don't lose touch. I'm going to try to send you a couple of via email of maybe some clips to add, but if we can do it, great. If not, no problem. Awesome, awesome. And then keep in touch, brother. Would you ever go to Fiji?
I would go to Fiji again. Don't know when, at some point, but I would love to go back because it was so much fun. Like in just a beautiful country, so much more to see. The people were awesome. Like you just be driving by and everyone's waving at you. It's such a a really nice thing that you just don't get anywhere else in the world. But yeah, Mike, I guess thank you so much for being on this podcast today and give up your time for it. Where can people find you and find this book? Where can they go for more Michael Holden?
Yes, michaeleholden.com. That'll take you to a link to the audiobook, to the regular book, to the paperback, the Kindle, the whole 9 yards. But michaeleholden.com. Please, if you're listening to this, go to the website and just take the assessment. Just disclaimers, we don't save who you are in the assessment. We just save the grade. So it'll say person 1 got this grade on the first run, person 1 got this grade on the second one. So please, thank you, everyone. And thank you, Cam. You're awesome.
No worries. Thank you again, Mike. All the links and resources will be shown in the description below. Thank you so much to the audience for listening to the Midweek Motivation Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and hit that subscribe button as it supports this show and the channel. If you're interested, you may also like the Midweek Motivation newsletter, which I send every week to your inbox, where it's going to be a healthy tip or a motivational story.
Thanks,
and thank you
Bye.
again for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.